Hi everyone, Amy here with amyswares, and I have a new layered stencil to share with you. This is called the Layered Party Stencil from A Colorful Life Designs, and it is part of the February 2022 release. As you can see here, it has 3 layers, one with some sprinkles or jimmies if you're from the East Coast, some hearts, and some stars. And you can see there's these little tick marks on the edge to help line up the stencils, and there's also a name in the lower left corner etched in so that you can be sure to have it on the correct side. So these are really easy to line up. I'm going to use some blending brushes here, and I have some mini Catherine Pooler inks, Life of the Party colors. And I'm just going to use some A2 size panels of 110-pound cardstock. Here's a picture of the card that I'm going to make for you today. You can see it's got some die cutting. So to start, I'm going to ink blend the panel with these 3 different layers. I'm starting with the stars first, and this yellow color from the Catherine Pooler inks. Now these are very highly saturated pigmented inks, so they're actually dye inks, but there's a lot of pigment, so they're nice and rich, and nice bright colors that I really wanted to kind of have for this because I wanted it to look ultimately like sprinkles. So I'm just lining up as best as I can. If you want them to be an exact lineup, you could do it maybe in your MISTI and then use the corner edges to line it up perfectly. But I wasn't too concerned if I didn't have it lined up perfectly, and if there was very slight overlap, I wasn't concerned about that at all. So now I'm using this pretty teal color to do the sprinkles, and that's going to complete this panel as far as this portion of the card here, and I'm really just winging it kind of as I go. But this idea actually came from my daughter. As soon as I saw those sprinkles, I thought of donuts, but I didn't think to make an actual donut with die cutting. That was totally my clever little daughter's idea. So I'm just using 2 different wonky stitched circle dies from My Favorite Things to kind of cut out the frosting part of the donut. And then you can see here it's got the nice stitched edge along the outside of it, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is way too smooth edged, right? You know, because donuts wouldn't be that smooth, and frosting wouldn't be that smooth on the edges. So I'm still going with it, knowing that I'm going to have to modify it because it wasn't going to work for me. But the basic shapes, I wanted to cut them out with these dies. And the same thing, it's a nice even cut on the center because it's cutting the inner portion of that smaller die, and then it has the wonky stitched on the outside. So immediately I'm looking at this and thinking, no, it's way too perfect. So I get out some scissors. Again, my daughter's like, well, just cut some, wavy edges on it. So I'm just following her lead. She's directing me here, and I'm glad I listened to her because it made it look a lot better. So I'm just kind of, working my way around the inside and then also on the outside. And it did kind of mess up and make the wonky stitched portion not that uniform. So I think if I did it again, I would just use like a regular circle die as to not have that kind of random stitching, knowing that I'm going to kind of, cut it off in parts anyway. So I do the same thing with the kind of craft colored cardstock, just to kind of make the outside and the inside part of the donut hole look a little less uniform and perfect. So I'm really just kind of, cutting a little bit of a, jagged edge as I go around the inside and the outside of the donut. And then that also kind of brought it down in size a little bit. So there was a little bit less brown and a little bit more frosting. So I thought that looked a lot better that way. And then I used some residual ink, just the same colors that I used to use the stencil on, and use that residual ink just to lay down those colors onto another panel of A2 size cardstock. And I know that I want to cut out some letters here to spell donut. So I get out these little alphabet dies from scrapbook.com. These are the, lowercase letters. I do also have the uppercase letters, but I'm just going to spell out donut across this little blended portion of the panel. And then I'm just going to use some mint tape. It's a low tack tape just to kind of hold them in place. And I'm kind of using my glass mat to line them up, but I'm really just eyeballing it. I know they're not exactly perfect and straight, but close enough, right? So I use this low tack tape and kind of hold them down, and then I'm ultimately going to run it through my die cutting machine. And this part of the card, I'm definitely winging it here. I wasn't sure if I was going to use the letters themselves or the cutout portion, so I'm kind of just, you know, figuring out as I go. And they're really delicate little letters, but I really liked how it looked on the panel, so I thought, you know, I'm going to use this as the background for the donut. So I'm going to attach that to an A2 size card base. Again, I'm the same 110 pound cardstock, and I'm just using the little sprinkle layer again with some teal just to add a little something extra to that blended panel with the word donut cut out. And then ultimately I attach that to the card base of the same size, and just use some, you know, adhesive there to tack that down, and make sure you get it in between the letters too, so the little parts of the N and the U don't kind of pop up on you. But I'm just going to use that, and then the white of the card base below it will, you know, show the word donut, not kind of in your face, but more subtle. And then I just use the same little inner pieces and attach those back in for the D and the O to finish that word. And I'm so pleased with how that looked when I was done. So just get that ready to go. And then I have just this main one donut. I don't really have a whole lot to work with. I guess I could have used the smaller dies and cut another donut, but I kind of have it in my mind that I'm going to go off the edge, and so then I'll be able to use the parts of the donut that I cut off and kind of place those in different areas in the composition. And ultimately I do end up kind of, you know, piecing that. I use the edge of the card base just to kind of draw a little pencil line and cut off the edge that I want for other parts of the panel, which you'll see me doing a little bit here. But I'm using these little alpha stamps. I think they're called Bella letters or something like that. I will link all the products that I used in the video description box below, whatever's still available. But basically I spell out worry, and the really cool thing about this stamp set is that it gives you multiple letters, so you don't have to kind of, you know, wing it and leave a gap with enough room to put in a letter. So I did have 2 R's in order to spell the word worry, so that was really convenient. And I'm just kind of loading them right up on my little acrylic block here, and I'm just gonna freehand stamp them down with this dark gray. I do stamp it off once on some scratch paper just to make sure that it looks good, and it's a little bit wonky, but honestly I like that look, and I think the letters themselves kind of lend themselves to a little bit of a wonky look, so just kind of suits my theme here. So here I'm back to trying to figure out the composition now that I got the sentiment all squared away, and I'm going to flip that over and, like I said, draw a pencil line and kind of cut off that one edge, and then I'll cut off the other edge on the side, and then just kind of, you know, figure out where I want to put them on the composition. I did fiddle around quite a bit trying to figure this out, but I didn't include all that on the, you know, video, because who has time for that, right? But anyway, once I got it all figured out, then I decided that I wanted to do, you know, a continuation of the sentiment on the inside. Here I'm just kind of putting this on the top. I wanted to make sure I didn't cover up the T on the donut. So this I just cut off the edge. I'm usually very bad at this. I've butchered so many card bases this way, but I made it work. And I had a little extra strip of the ink blended layered portion as well. So I picked this sentiment from Tailored Expressions. It's a simple strip, and it says "You are not alone." So the front says "Donut worry, you're not alone." So I'm just going to attach this little extra strip of ink blended goodness on the inside of the card base for a little added interest, and just to kind of continue the design, and cut off this excess. Again, manage not to butcher the card base. I'm telling you, that usually doesn't go well for me, guys. I always end up like cutting into the card base and getting mad. So it worked out in my favor this time. But here's the finished card. You could see it's pretty flat. I just kind of attached everything down. I didn't pop anything up with foam, so there's not really dimension, but I'm really pleased with how the design turned out. And I've got, you know, 3 parts of the donut, so nice odd number, which is visually appealing. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing. And if you hit the bell, then you'll be notified every time I post a new video. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.